A billionaire pretends to be a janitor on his first date to test if the woman he's seeing values character over wealth. Landon Cross had it all. The money, the jets, the global tech empire. At 34, his name graced magazine covers and stock market tickers alike. But what he didn't have, what his billions couldn't buy, was trust. Every woman he met seemed enamored with his fortune, not his heart. Behind every flirtatious smile, he saw dollar signs. After a string of failed relationships, he was done being a prize. He wanted something real, something raw. That's when he had the idea, ridiculous, risky, and maybe brilliant. What if he whispered to his assistant one morning, "I went on a date as someone else?" She raised an eyebrow. "Like who?" "A janitor," he said, grinning. A week later, the plan was in motion. He created a fake dating profile under the name Eli Walker, listing his occupation as a maintenance worker. No luxury suits, no bodyguards, no chauffeured cars, just boots, overalls, and a dusty old truck. That's how he met Camille, a school teacher from a quiet neighborhood who never once asked what he earned. And now he was about to find out if she truly saw him, or just the man he pretended to be. Camille Rivera, 31, had long since given up on fairy tale romances. After her last heartbreak, she vowed never to fall for charm without substance again. She wanted someone kind, honest, someone who could laugh without looking at their watch. So when Eli Walker messaged her with a simple, "I'd love to know what makes you smile," she felt something she hadn't in a while: curiosity. His profile was modest. He listed fixing broken things as a passion. He loved jazz, grilled cheese sandwiches, and long walks after rainstorms. It was refreshingly unpolished. "I'm intrigued," she told her best friend Mariah. "He's not like the other guys." They talked for days, texts turned to voice notes, laughter grew into comfort. He never asked for selfies or sent shirtless gym pics. Instead, he shared stories about fixing leaky sinks and helping old tenants with groceries. Camille was used to men trying to impress her. Eli wasn't trying at all. When he finally asked her to dinner, she hesitated for a moment, then typed back, "Pick the place. I'll be there." She had no idea her date wasn't a janitor at all, but a billionaire who'd built the very app they were messaging on. Landon needed the perfect location, somewhere humble, cozy, and real. No velvet ropes or maitre d's announcing arrivals. He settled on Maggie's place, a small family-run diner nestled in the heart of Fairview. The lighting was warm, the booths were worn, and the smell of grilled onions filled the air. He had dined there a few times in college, before the success of his startup swept him into the world of private clubs and rooftop lounges. To sell the illusion, Landon made arrangements with the owner, Maggie herself. He offered a generous donation in exchange for one unusual request: to let him pose as one of her janitors for the evening. Maggie, having known Landon from his early days, laughed heartily but agreed. That evening he changed in the storage closet, swapping designer threads for faded blue overalls and worn-out sneakers. He took a deep breath, looked in the cracked mirror, and rubbed a little dust on his cheek for good measure. "Time to see if I'm worth loving," he muttered, stepping out with a mop in one hand and a pounding heart in the other. Camille would arrive in 20 minutes. His test was about to begin. Camille walked into Maggie's place 10 minutes early. She wore a navy blue dress with white polka dots, her curly hair pinned up and her eyes filled with cautious hope. She scanned the room and saw no sign of Eli. A waitress greeted her warmly and led her to a corner booth. "Your date should be right with you." Landon stood behind the counter pretending to mop, watching her. She didn't glance at the luxury cars outside, didn't flash judgmental looks at the laminated menus. Instead, she complimented the waitress's earrings and laughed when a toddler at the next table dropped a fork. Finally, Landon approached. He wiped his hands on a rag and said, "Camille?" She blinked in surprise. "Eli," he nodded, offering a shy smile. "Sorry for the get-up, I came straight from work, didn't want to be late." She studied his outfit, then his eyes. Something in his tone was genuine, soft, unguarded. "I don't mind, you're here, that's what matters." He exhaled silently, heart swelling. She didn't flinch, didn't frown. Instead, she smiled. Maybe, just maybe, she'd pass the test. As they looked over the menus, Camille started the conversation. "So, what's the most rewarding part of your job?" Landon sipped water, careful to answer as Eli would. "It's simple stuff, really. Fixing things that are broken, leaky pipes, jammed doors. It feels good when something works again because of you." She nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds more meaningful than people give it credit for." The waitress brought their food, burgers and fries, and they dove into a conversation that flowed like an old song. Camille shared stories from her classroom about the time a student gifted her a rock painted like a cat, and how she couldn't throw it away for months. Landon listened intently, laughing when she did, asking follow-ups, his mind forgetting the act for long moments. "What about dreams?" she asked. "If money weren't an issue, what would you do?" He paused. Honestly, I'd probably try to build something that helps people connect. Like a place where everyone feels seen. She smiled at that. Sounds like something we need more of. He nearly choked on the irony. She had no idea how close to the truth she'd just come. After dinner, Landon insisted on walking Camille to her car. The night air was crisp and the sidewalk glowed under dim streetlights. As they strolled, she bent down to help an elderly woman pick up a bag of spilled groceries. Landon watched silently, touched by how instinctive her kindness was. Most of the women he dated in the past were too wrapped up in their phones or appearances to notice others. Camille didn't hesitate. "You didn't even blink," he said once they resumed walking. She shrugged. "We've all needed help at some point." He smiled. "That's rare, you know." They reached her car and Camille leaned against the door. "So, same time next week?" He hesitated. This was the moment he should tell her, but he couldn't, not yet. Instead he nodded. "Absolutely. I'll bring my best mop." She laughed, and for the first time in a long while Landon felt something real. Not an act, not a transaction, just a connection. But as he watched her drive off, guilt crept in. He was lying, and the deeper this went, the harder the truth would hit. Landon sat alone in the storage closet after Camille left. He had peeled off the overalls and stared at the pristine suit hanging beside him. His real skin, the world expected. He should have felt victorious. Camille had passed every test. She hadn't blinked at his so-called job, hadn't judged the cheap dinner, and had shown genuine warmth. But it didn't feel like a win. It felt wrong. Was it fair to test someone like this? To hold a secret so big it could crush everything they were building? The next morning he canceled meetings and ignored his phone. Instead, he reread Camille's texts, each message full of gentle humor and curiosity. She was unlike anyone he had met before. He needed to tell her the truth, but not yet. One more date, one more night to be Eli, the janitor, and soak in this rare feeling of being seen for who he was, not what he owned. Just one more, he told himself. Then he'd come clean, and pray she'd understand. A week later, Landon arrived at Maggie's place before Camille. This time he wasn't pretending to mop floors. Maggie had offered him a quiet table in the back, and for the first time in years he felt nervous. Camille walked in wearing a mustard yellow sweater and jeans, her curly hair down, eyes bright as ever. "You clean up nice for a janitor," she teased, sliding into the booth. Landon laughed. "I figured I owed you a dinner without grease stains." They ordered grilled salmon and mashed potatoes, and their conversation flowed even more easily than before. Camille told him about her students' class play, and Landon shared made-up tales about his janitorial misadventures. They laughed hard when he told her he once got locked in a bathroom stall during a blackout. It wasn't true, but it made her laugh, and he needed that sound like air. At one point she looked at him seriously. "You know, you're different. Most men either show off or shut down, but you're just here, real." Landon's throat tightened. He had never felt more seen and more unseen at the same time. She was falling for Eli, but he wasn't Eli, and time was running out. After dinner, Camille invited him to her place for tea. Landon hesitated. This wasn't part of the plan. But curiosity and emotion tugged him forward. Her apartment was small but warm. Photos of her family adorned the shelves, books lined the walls, and a handmade quilt covered the couch. It smelled like cinnamon and old books. They sat cross-legged on the floor, sipping tea and listening to a Miles Davis vinyl on her record player. "This is my favorite song," she said as Blue and Green started to play. "My dad used to dance me around the kitchen to it." Landon watched her, not as a billionaire or a man in disguise, but as someone lucky enough to witness her light. Then her cat leapt onto his lap and Camille chuckled. "She doesn't warm up to strangers. Guess I'm not one anymore," he said softly. She met his gaze. "No, you're not." The moment hung in the air, tender, quiet, delicate. Landon wanted to kiss her, but he also wanted to run, because the deeper he fell, the more painful the reveal would be, and the clock was ticking. The next morning, Landon sat in his penthouse office overlooking the skyline of his empire. It all felt meaningless. His board of directors awaited a decision on a new merger, but his thoughts were with Camille. His assistant Quinn walked in holding a tablet. "You've got 3 interviews today and dinner with investors tonight. Should I reschedule?" Landon looked up, eyes tired. "Cancel everything. I need time." Quinn raised an eyebrow. "She's really different, huh? She makes me want to be the kind of man I pretend to be around her." Quinn hesitated, then asked, "Are you going to tell her?" "I have to, soon. I'm scared." "You built a tech empire from scratch," she said. "But this is the first time I've seen you afraid." That night, Landon stared at Camille's contact photo on his phone. He typed a message, deleted it, tried calling, hung up. The truth was heavier than ever. He couldn't run from it much longer, but he wasn't sure he had the courage to face what it might cost him. 2 days later, Landon was meeting a venture capital partner at the Gilded Ivy, one of the city's most luxurious rooftop lounges. dressed in a tailored navy suit. He looked every bit the mogul. The last thing he expected was to see Camille. She was there with her cousin, celebrating a birthday. Her hair was tied back and she wore a sleek green dress, different from her usual style, but her eyes were unmistakable. She hadn't seen him yet. Landon froze. If she saw him now dressed as himself, the truth would explode in the worst possible way. He considered leaving, but it was too late. Camille turned, locking eyes with him across the room. For a moment her smile held, then it faltered. Her brows drew together. Confusion, recognition, hurt. She took slow steps toward him. "Eli," she said, voice trembling. He swallowed. "Camille, you work here." He couldn't lie. "Not anymore." "No, I own it." The color drained from her face. "You lied to me." Landon tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled away. "In all the ways that matter I didn't," he whispered. But she was already walking out the door. Camille didn't answer his calls, didn't reply to his messages. She'd vanished like a ghost. Landon sat alone in the penthouse, the city lights outside mocking him. He'd hurt her deeply. And not because he was rich, but because he had robbed her of the one thing she valued most, honesty. She had told him about her trust issues, her past disappointments, her need for truth. And he had still tested her. It hadn't been a harmless experiment. It was betrayal. He thought back to the way she looked at him that night, like she didn't even recognize him. Like all the laughter, the warmth, the connection had been erased in one blink. Quinn entered quietly. "She returned the book you lent her," she said, placing it on the desk. It was a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. A note slipped out. "You were the first person I felt safe with in a long time. I guess I was wrong." Camille. Landon pressed the note to his chest. He had everything, and now he might have lost the only thing that mattered. Landon wasn't the kind of man who gave up easily. He'd built his empire on second chances and stubborn resilience. But this wasn't a business deal. This was Camille. So instead of sending flowers or crafting a public apology, he decided to meet her on her terms. He spent 2 days volunteering at the local school she worked at, quietly, not as the billionaire, as Eli. He fixed broken chairs in classrooms, replaced flickering lights in the hallway, and helped paint a mural in the playground. He didn't tell anyone who he really was. On the third day, Camille saw him. She was walking with a group of students when she froze at the sight of him repainting a rusty bench. Their eyes met. He stood, hands covered in blue paint, heart racing. "I'm not here to win you back," he said. "I'm here to prove that I meant everything I said, even if I went about it the wrong way." She didn't respond, not then, but she didn't walk away either, and that to Landon was hope. That evening Camille found a thick envelope waiting on her doorstep. No name, no return address, just her name in elegant handwriting. Inside was a handwritten letter 10 pages long. Landon had poured his soul into it. No assistants, no lawyers, no PR team, just truth. He wrote about growing up in a small town, losing his parents young, being raised by his grandmother who cleaned hotel rooms to pay bills. He told her how the world saw him as a success story. But most days he felt like a scared kid hiding behind boardrooms and bank accounts. He wrote about how her laugh had been the first thing in years to silence the noise in his head. And most of all, he confessed that pretending to be Eli wasn't meant to deceive her, but to escape his reality and find something genuine. "I never lied about who I was inside," the final line read. "Only about the world I came from." Camille read every word, tears staining the page. Then she folded it up, placed it back in the envelope, and stared out the window for a long, long time. A week passed. Landon kept his distance. No texts, no calls, just silence. Then one morning a card arrived at his company headquarters. It was a simple invitation. "School spring fair, Saturday, 10 a.m. Bring paintbrushes." He stared at it for a full minute, pulse quickening, no signature. But he knew it was from her. Saturday came. He wore jeans and an old t-shirt. No designer watches, no security detail. Just a man with paint on his hands and hope in his chest. He arrived early and started helping set up booths and hang decorations. When Camille arrived, she was surrounded by laughing children and paper crafts. Their eyes met again. This time her smile was hesitant, but real. "Nice of you to show up," she said. "I figured it was the least I could do," he replied. All morning they worked side by side, not talking about the past, just being present, sharing paint spills, stolen glances, and cautious laughter. For the first time in weeks, Landon felt something that resembled forgiveness, not in words, but in the way she didn't walk away. As the sun dipped low and the fair wound down, Landon found Camille sitting on a bench beneath a tree, her hair windswept, her expression unreadable. He approached quietly, sat beside her. "You were right to be angry," he said. "I was hurt," she replied. "Not because you're rich, but because you didn't trust me with the truth. I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that once you knew, you'd see me the way everyone else does." She looked at him then, her eyes soft. And what if I had? Then I'd rather have had one honest day with you as Eli than a lifetime of pretending to be the man you thought I was. Silence, wind rustling the leaves above. I still don't know if I can fully trust you, she said quietly. He nodded. Then let me earn it. No tricks, no lies, just me. Camille studied him, not the suit, not the name, just the man beside her. I'm not promising anything, she said. You don't have to, he whispered. And for the first time she leaned into him, just a little, but it was enough. The days that followed weren't perfect, but they were real. Camille and Landon took things slow. No grand gestures, no expensive gifts, just long walks, honest conversations, and shared meals at diners where the waitresses knew their names. He met her friends again, this time as Landon Cross, not Eli Walker. Some were skeptical, others warmed up quickly. Her students called him Mr. L and roped him into school projects. He repaired leaky faucets in classrooms without anyone asking. He even painted a mural with the kids that read, "It's not what you have, it's what you give." Camille began to see that beneath the empire and the fortune, Landon was the same man who had wiped tables and laughed at her terrible puns. And Landon learned to live without the armor of wealth. He found joy in doing the dishes together, in slow dances in the living room, in watching Camille fall asleep with a book on her chest. They were rebuilding trust, slowly, carefully, and sometimes that was the bravest kind of love there was. Months passed, and while Landon and Camille still kept their relationship somewhat private, word began to spread. Paparazzi eventually caught wind of the quiet schoolteacher seen with the elusive tech billionaire. Tabloids ran headlines like "Billionaire's Mystery Girlfriend Identified," and "From Janitor to Jet Setter." Camille felt overwhelmed. She didn't care about attention or headlines, but now the world was watching. Landon noticed her discomfort and acted swiftly. He released a public statement, not through a PR firm, but through a personal blog post that quickly went viral. In it he admitted to creating the Eli Walker persona. He wrote candidly about why he did it, not to deceive but to protect his heart. He spoke of Camille with reverence and honesty, calling her the most genuine soul he'd ever known. He ended the post with, "I found love when I stopped hiding behind wealth and started showing up as myself." Surprisingly, the internet didn't turn on him. People resonated with his vulnerability. His story became a trending symbol of authenticity in a filtered world. Camille, reading the post late one night, felt the final pieces of her wall begin to fall. He hadn't just told the truth, he had done it when it mattered most. With the world watching, Landon and Camille had every reason to let pressure ruin them. But they didn't. Instead, they built a life that honored who they were, not what the headlines demanded. They hosted Sunday potlucks at her apartment. Landon bought a modest cabin 2 hours outside the city where they could escape the chaos. He started a foundation in her name, the Camille Rivera Fund, which provided scholarships and classroom grants to underfunded schools. But most meaningful of all, he kept showing up for the small things. He drove her to work when it rained. He made pancakes on Saturdays. He still fixed her leaky kitchen sink without hiring someone else to do it. And she reminded him of life's simpler joys, late-night jazz, school field trips, handwritten notes on lunch napkins. Their love wasn't a fairy tale. It was messier, more honest, and infinitely more human. Camille had once said she didn't believe in fairy tales, but now she believed in something stronger, love that tells the truth, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. One crisp autumn evening, Landon knelt in the middle of their tiny garden behind the cabin. Fireflies danced around them. Camille stood barefoot in the grass, wearing one of his oversized sweaters. In his hands wasn't a diamond the size of a golf ball, just a simple gold ring. "Camille," he said, voice unsteady, "you fell for a man in overalls, for a story I didn't know how to tell until I met you. But I'm done hiding," she smiled, tears already forming. "I don't need you to promise forever," he continued. "Just promise to keep choosing this, choosing us." She didn't hesitate. "Only if you promise to keep fixing my faucets yourself." They laughed. They kissed, and in that moment it wasn't about wealth or appearances, it was about character, about honesty, about a love that passed the hardest test of all. Not the one he gave her, but the one he gave himself. To be vulnerable, to be seen, and to be loved anyway. Did this story move you? If you enjoyed Beneath the Overalls, A Billionaire's Hidden Test, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional stories that dig beneath the surface and explore the truth behind love, trust, and identity. Your support helps us bring more powerful narratives to life. See you in the next story.